There's a moment in every NBA season where the league stops lying to itself. The standings start to stretch, the middle tightens, and the conversations change. This is that moment. Because trade season isn't about rumors, it's about truth. About who's good enough to push forward, about who's waited too long, and about why even the untouchable doesn't feel untouchable anymore. Dynasties don't fade quietly now. They get evaluated, they get questioned, they get tested. Tonight, we're living in the league. The results, the standings, the pressure points, and then we're going where this season is really pointing, to trade season, legacy, and why change comes for everyone, whether they're ready or not. I'm Vincent Cooper. This is Round Ball Rants. Let's get into it. Before we get into the heart of tonight's show, let's live in the league for a moment and check in on what actually happened on the floor and where it leaves us right now. We had 2 games worth paying attention to, and both quietly matter. Before we get into it, quick housekeeping. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're following the show and leave a rating if this has been hitting for you. It genuinely helps Round Ball Rants find new listeners. If you're on Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcast, follow the show there too. Every platform matters. Every listen counts. And if you ever wanted to be part of the conversation, the call-in line is 216-452-8813. All right. Let's live in the league a moment. Chicago Bulls 127, Cleveland Cavaliers 111. Chicago took care of business at home. Josh Giddey ran the show. 23 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists. Controlling the tempo and keeping the Bulls organized all night. Kobe White led all Bulls scorers with 25, and Nikolai Vucevic gave them steady interior production. And Chicago shot over 56% as a team. This wasn't just a hot shooting night, it was a connected one. The ball moved, the spacing held, and Chicago looked like a team that knew exactly what it wanted to get to. And for Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell finished with 32, but it was another night where too much fell on one guy late. Defensive lapses, slow rotations, and not enough secondary answers showed up once again. Memphis Grizzlies 116, Minnesota Timberwolves 110. Out west, Memphis went on the road and earned one. Jaren Jackson Jr. led the way with 28 points and 12 rebounds, anchoring both ends as the Grizzlies flipped the game with a strong third quarter run and executed down the stretch. Minnesota competed, but when the game slowed late, Memphis was sharper. Better shot selection, better defensive possessions, and more composure when it mattered. It wasn't flashy, just solid professional basketball. Now, a quick look at the standings. Zooming out, let's check where the league stands top to bottom. Just wins, losses, and the games back. Starting first with the Eastern Conference, and at the top of the East. And first is the Detroit Pistons at 21-5. Second, the New York Knicks at 18-7, 2.5 games back. Toronto sits in third at 16-11, 5.5 games back. In fourth is the Boston Celtics, 15-11, 6 games back. In fifth is the Orlando Magic, 15-11, 6 games back. In sixth is the Philadelphia 76ers, 14-11, 6.5 games back. Seventh has the Atlanta Hawks at 15-12, 6.5 games back. In eighth are the Miami Heat, 14-12, 7 games back. In ninth are the Cleveland Cavaliers, 15-13, 7 games back. In 10th are the Chicago Bulls, 11-15, 10 games back. In 12th are the Milwaukee Bucks, 11-16 at 10.5 games back. In 12th are the Charlotte Hornets, 8-18, 13 games back. In 13th are the Brooklyn Nets, 7-18, 13.5 games back. In 14th are the Indiana Pacers, 6-20, 15 games back. And in 15th are the Washington Wizards at 4-20, 16 games back. Now, we'll take a look at the Western Conference. In first is the Oklahoma City Thunder at 24-2. In second are the Denver Nuggets at 19-6, 4.5 games back. In third are the Los Angeles Lakers at 18-7, 5.5 games back. In fourth are the San Antonio Spurs at 18-7, 5.5 games back. In fifth are the Houston Rockets at 16-7, 6.5 games back. In sixth are the Minnesota Timberwolves, 17-10, 7.5 games back. In seventh are the Phoenix Suns, 14-12, 10 games back. In eighth are the Golden State Warriors, 13-14, and 11.5 games back. In ninth are the Memphis Grizzlies, 13-14, 11.5 games back. And in 10th are the Utah Jazz, 10-15, 13.5 games back. In 11th are the Portland Trail Blazers, 10-16 with 14 games back. In 12th are the Dallas Mavericks, 10-17, 14.5 games back. In 13th are the Sacramento Kings at 6-20, 18 games back. In 14th are the Los Angeles Clippers at 6-20, 18 games back. And in 15th are the New Orleans Pelicans at 5-22 at 19.5 games back. Now that we've checked in on the results and we've laid the standings out clean, this is where the season starts telling the truth. Because trade season isn't about rumors, it's about honesty. And we're officially in that window of the NBA calendar where teams stop asking, what could this be? And start asking, what is this, really? The trade deadline is February 5th, but the thinking starts long before that. December 15th passes. Players become trade eligible and suddenly the league loosens its grip. Contracts can move. Salaries can match. Conversations that were hypothetical in November become very real in December. And when you look at the names floating right now, what jumps out isn't just who's being mentioned, it's why. Because these aren't just random names. These are pressure points. Let's start with the biggest one because pretending that it isn't there doesn't make it disappear. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Every time his name shows up in trade conversations, people react like it's disrespectful, like it's blasphemy. But front officers don't operate on emotion, they operate on timelines. And the uncomfortable truth is this: Milwaukee is closer to the crossroads than people want to admit. That doesn't mean that they want to trade Giannis. It doesn't mean that he wants out. What it means is that the league is watching whether the Bucks can justify pushing all their chips forward again, or whether they're inching toward a moment where the future matters as much as the present. When teams like San Antonio or Houston get mentioned, it's not fantasy basketball. That's asset math. Young talent, draft capital, long-run flexibility. When big market teams like the Knicks or the Lakers get floated, that's about star gravity and organizational confidence. And none of this moves unless Giannis signals it. But the fact that the league is already mapping possibilities, that tells you everything that you need to know. This isn't noise. It's a contingency being planned right in front of us. And contingency planning only happens when certainty starts cracking. Now, let's talk about the one that feels unthinkable, but it keeps getting whispered anyways. Steph Curry. Let me be very clear here. This is not about Steph being washed. This is not about disrespecting a legacy. This is about the Warriors staring at the standings and asking a brutal question. Is this version of us actually capable of winning another title? Golden State is hovering around 500. The West is unforgiving. And while Steph is still brilliant, brilliance alone doesn't bend the league anymore. What's changed is the league's posture. 10 years ago, Curry was untouchable because the Warriors were inevitable. Now he's untouchable because of what he represents, not necessarily because of what the roster around him can guarantee. And when people start floating ideas about pivoting or retooling or even the unthinkable, that's not because anyone wants Steph gone. It's because front offices don't romanticize timelines. They look at age curves. They look at cap sheets. They look at the difference between being competitive and being dangerous, and the fact that teams are even discussing what a post-Steph path could look like tells you something uncomfortable. The league no longer waits for dynasties to die naturally. It plans for the end while the banner is still hanging in the rafters. That doesn't mean a Curry trade is coming. It means that Golden State is being evaluated like every other franchise now, without immunity. And that brings us to the most interesting names on the market right now, Michael Porter Jr. This is where trade season gets very complicated, because MPJ is good enough to matter, but his situation doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Brooklyn is rebuilding. They want picks, they want flexibility, but Porter is playing too well to ignore. And this is where front offices start arguing with themselves. Do you trade a player who can actually score, actually space the floor, actually carry nights just to stay committed to a rebuild? Or do you keep him, risk drifting into mediocrity, and lose your lottery leverage? That tension is why Brooklyn is even taking calls. It's not desperation, it's evaluation. And when teams like Chicago get mentioned in these conversations, that tells you exactly where they see themselves. Not tanking, not contending, but hovering. The most dangerous place to be in the league. Because teams in those spots, they don't want stars. They want direction. And sometimes a scorer like Porter looks like this direction, even if he isn't a solution. Now zoom out for a second, because this isn't about Giannis, Steph, or MPJ. This is about organizational honesty across the league. You can see it in the standings. Teams at the top aren't rushing, they're reinforcing. Teams at the bottom, they're not hiding, they're selling. And teams in the middle, the ones stuck between belief and reality, those are the ones driving the market. Those are the teams calling first. Those are the teams leaking the interest. Those are the teams hoping one move can save a season before it has to be redefined. Trade seasons don't start with deals. It starts with admissions. Admissions about ceilings. Admissions about timelines. Admissions about whether the plan still makes sense. And right now the league is full of teams quietly admitting things they haven't said out loud yet. So when you hear these rumors, don't treat them like gossip. Treat them like symptoms. They tell you who feels the pressure. They tell you who feels the urgency. They tell you who feels stuck. And over the next 6 weeks, we're going to find out which teams have the courage to act and which ones convince themselves to wait out another year. That's the real drama of trade season. Not the headline, the choice behind it. And that's where this league is right now. Before we keep going, a quick word from our partner, Dubby. If you're looking for clean energy without the crash, Dubby's built for that. No sugar, no artificial junk, just focus when you need it. Whether you're grinding through work, the gym, or late night hoops, it does its job without getting in the way. You can check them out at dubby.gg, and if you decide to try it, use the code Round Ball Rants. Alright, let's get back into it. So after talking about trade season, about Giannis, Steph, and the pressure points forming around the league, the real question becomes, how did we even get here? Why does it feel like nothing is sacred anymore? Why does it feel like no era gets to fade quietly? And the answer is uncomfortable, but it's simple. The NBA no longer lets dynasties die naturally. Not because it's cruel, and not because it's impatient, but because the league and the ecosystem around it has changed. There used to be an understanding in this league. Dynasties rose, dynasties peaked, and dynasties aged out. Magic faded. Bird faded. The Showtime Lakers handed the league off to someone else. Even the Jordan Bulls ended. Not with the trade rumor, but with exhaustion and finality. That doesn't really happen anymore. Now the league doesn't wait for decline, it anticipates it. Front offices aren't reactive, they're preemptive. And that shift is why names like Steph Curry and Giannis even exist in trade conversations before the fall. The modern NBA is built on windows, not eras. Salary caps harden faster. Luxury tax penalties punish loyalty. Draft pick valuation has exploded. You're no longer rewarded for riding a legend into the sunset. You're punished for not extracting value early enough. And that's not personal, that's structural. If a front office waits too long now, the cost isn't nostalgia, it's 5 years of irrelevance. So teams don't let dynasties decay, they interrupt them. Think about what Steph Curry represents. He doesn't just change a franchise, he changed basketball. And yet the Warriors are now being evaluated the same way every other team is evaluated. Are you still good enough to justify the cost of staying together? That question would have been unthinkable a decade ago, but today, it's standard operating procedure. The league no longer protects history, it protects optionality. And this is where fans and front officers diverge emotionally. Fans want stories to end with dignity. Front offices want them to end with leverage. Fans see legacies, front offices see timelines. And when those two things stop lining up, trade season gets loud. That's why Giannis feels different right now. Not because he's leaving, but because Milwaukee has to decide whether they're still maximizing his prime or just honoring it. That's a brutal distinction. One is competitive, the other is sentimental. And sentimental doesn't survive the modern NBA. This is also why the middle of the league is the most dangerous place to live. Teams stuck between contention and rebuilding don't get time anymore. They don't get patience. They don't get the benefit of the doubt. They get passed up. Passed by younger teams, passed by bolder teams, passed by franchises willing to tear something down before it collapses on its own. So when you hear trade rumors, understand this. They're not about panic. They're about control. Control of the timeline. Control of the narrative. Control of the future before the present slips away. And here's the hardest truth of all. The league doesn't mourn dynasties anymore. It repurposes them. It takes their stars, their assets, their cap space, and redistributes them into the next wave. And that's not cruelty. That's evolution. So when we say that this feels different, it's because that it is. This isn't the end of eras the way we used to know them. This is the NBA deciding that no era is allowed to end on its own terms anymore, only on the league's. And that's why we're here. That's why trade season feels heavier. That's why legacies feel more fragile. That's why even the untouchable feels touchable now. The NBA didn't lose its soul. It just stopped waiting. Trade season in the NBA always arrives quietly. It doesn't crash in, it settles. It shows up in winter, when the days are shorter, the noise fades, and the calendar starts asking questions we can't avoid anymore. Because trades aren't really about losing players. They're about acknowledging change. Teams don't get to carry every piece forward forever. Some parts were perfect for who they were last season, but they don't fit who they need to become next. And life works the same way. This stretch of the year, winter into the new year, it isn't about some forced resolution or loud declaration that this time things will be different. It's about taking inventory, about realizing that growth demands movement, and movement means not everything comes with us. Sometimes pieces have to be left behind. Not because they failed, not because they didn't matter, but because they've already done their work. We honor them by acknowledging that. We don't rush past it. We don't erase it. We give it space. We let it breathe. We allow it to fade naturally. And that's the hardest part. Because holding on feels safer than letting go, even when letting go is what allows us to keep going. That's the peak of it, the moment where you realize the weight that you've been carrying isn't proof of strength anymore, it's resistance. And once you see that, something shifts. The heart doesn't disappear when things change. The core doesn't go away. It stays with you, just lighter, more centered, more aligned with who you're becoming. You're not becoming someone else. You're becoming more you, a better version of you, a steadier version of you, a version of you that you can actually carry into next year without breaking. And here's the quiet truth at the end of all of this. Change doesn't mean you lost something. It means that you made room to breathe, room to grow, room to keep moving forward without dragging yesterday behind you. So as the year turns, don't rush yourself. Don't mourn what had to stay behind longer than necessary. Let it rest. Let it be what it was. And then step into what's next. Not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. I'm Vincent Cooper. This was Round Ball Rants. Thank you for being here with me. And remember, it's not just basketball. It's therapy with a bounce.